Hi guys, and welcome to the Magic Show. In this little magic trick, I am going to show you how you can translate your web applications to languages you do not understand. Let me illustrate by going to translations, being my entities here, and then click plus, and then choosing English here, and then typing an ID, and then typing some content. Hello, comma, welcome to Magic. Now, if I click save now, then it inserts a new record into the database. However, it does something in addition to its default thing, which you can only appreciate if you wait a couple of seconds and then click refresh, which is that it actually translates my original sentence to every single language I have defined in my languages table. And of course, you probably realize if you've seen some of my previous YouTube videos that I created the entirety of this application in 2 seconds, which I of course did. But I did spend some time modifying it after I created it. I spent some 5 to 10 minutes to modify the applications. And the most important thing I actually did was, if you go here, and by the way, you will need version 8.4.1, which is my most recently released version of Magic. If you want to reproduce this, then you open the Files menu, Babelfish, then you open translations.post.hl. And this is where the magic occurs. And basically what it does, it creates a background thread that connects or invokes Google Translate and translates my English texts. It only works for English, meaning if I insert a Norwegian item here, if I choose anything but English, then this logic is not going to kick in. And of course, if it translates erroneously, then I can update it. Every now and then Google Translate messes up things, right? But if I create a new item, type English, then it will basically translate, using Google Translate, my content parts into every single language I happen to have in my database dynamically, implying you can declare Japanese, Hebrew, Arabic, etc., as your languages, and Magic will simply automatically translate that English piece of text into any of the languages you happen to have in your languages table here. So if I create a new language here and I create a new translation afterwards, it will automatically translate that item by default for me to all of my supported languages. Register. Okay, let's choose English. Register. Save. Now it inserts one record, returns immediately. The background thread kicks in. 5 seconds later, I have the item in every single supported language. Right, and if it yet again translates erroneously, I can modify it to whatever I wish for that particular language. Now, of course, this makes it insanely much more simpler to create an enterprise app and localize it into 100 different languages. Simply because you no longer need to send your files or anything like that, CSV files, and import and export out and in of your database, and etc., to some sort of like language translation responsible back office worker, etc., simply because 98% of the times Google Translate will translate your English text perfectly valid to all the languages you happen to be wanting to support. Now, this was one of the changes I did. Another change I did is that I modified my front end. If you expand source app, components, then you expand translations, then you expand modals, and then you click the edit.translations.component.html. Then the one thing I also changed was this part. I created an app selector which looks up the description from my languages table instead of requiring the user to type in the 2-letter ISO language abbreviation, which allows me to do things like this. This is where the drop-down select list kicks in, basically. Yet again, in the description of this YouTube video, there is a link to an article where I will publish the code I modified. I also added the ID and the local here in edit.translations.component.ts. In the translations.component.ts, I added the ID and the local because Magic will by default not display primary key columns, and I needed the primary key here because I wanted to have this column and I wanted to have this column, right? And then I did something similar for the languages.components.ts, but there I added up that local only. And those were the only changes I did. However, one thing which might be important is that as you CRUDify your database, then as you CRUDify the languages table, you do not want to have any authorization on the read endpoint. And the same is true for translations. Why? Because you want unauthorized users to still be able to get their localized version of text entities on checkboxes and buttons and etc. etc. Those were basically the only changes I did. If you want to have the database model, then if you download the latest version of Magic, version 8.4.1, then you will find one version for MySQL and one version for MS SQL Batch. And you can choose selected saved file here, babelfish.sql. It exists for both Microsoft SQL Server and MySQL, and you can just click evaluate here. Of course, I can't do this now because I already have this database. But this basically creates the database, and then of course the codification process creates the backend, and then of course the endpoints here created my front end. And of course you can choose Angular Dark or you can choose Angular Default, and you can generate. So, and then you have the front end. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.